It's 5 o'clock somewhere. At Johnny's house, it's 5 o'clock. Actually, it's just a little after 5. At Susan Campbell's house, it's a little after 5. I'm Bruce Barber, and this is Postcards from the Pandemic.
Another exciting episode.
Now, Susan Campbell doesn't drink, so Johnny and I will drink enough for all three of us.
That's very kind. Thank you.
Yes,
I was going to defer the other way and not drink, but I guess we have to.
You're a giver.
Now, Johnny, even though Campbell and I work together in the good times, which will return, Susan is upstairs. I'm downstairs at the University of New Haven. But I'd like you to give some context as to why we decided to book her for this episode.
All right. So I first met Susan on Real Life Survival Guide when she was a guest. I think we were at the Rib House, of all places, if I remember correctly, and just had a great conversation. I'm an avid fan of her writing and her Twitter account, so we have that going on. But, you know, Susan was on the Colin McEnroe Show the other day, and we've talked about it before. You know, it'd be a great person to have on, just talk about what's going on in the world. But Susan is a distinguished lecturer at the UNH, and besides me, you have the entire media leadership of University of New Haven in front of us. We have the newspaper and the radio station. But
That's
you
right.
know,
We got the Charger
winning...
Bulletin and WNHU in the house.
This is great. And a Pulitzer Prize winner, current journalist for Hearst newspapers. So, Susan, welcome.
Thank you so much. What a great lead-in.
Oh,
I do what I can.
So good. Yeah, he's awesome. And so good to see you. I miss you, Campbell.
Oh, shut up.
He really does. We actually bring your name up quite a bit. So
That's
100%.
weird.
Actually, it is a little weird, but but in a good way.
Okay. All right.
Yeah, Johnny said you were great on Colin McEnroe's show the other day.
Oh, that's nice. I actually enjoyed the conversation. I was a little bit hesitant because filling an hour of radio, I mean, you all may be able to do that, but I had warned Colin, you know, what if I'm dull? But I really I enjoyed the conversation. And at the end, I think I said, I hope the listeners didn't nod off, but it was good. That's how we used to sit around and talk at the Current. I don't know how we got any work done. We often didn't.
And nor should you. Colin is, I'm such a Colin fan. And actually, Johnny Broker, I think he's, maybe we could convince him to be on Postcards from the Pandemic. And Johnny, I love the fact somebody's shooting hoops in the background there.
Yeah, we recently just put a new basketball hoops back here in my little summer community.
Boom!
So
somebody's knocking them down.
Yeah, so they're doing pretty well.
My neighbor over here, his son, you know him, John Spodek.
Yeah.
Miles Spodek is playing so much basketball that I'm like, where are you? Like 99% of your free throws are dropping now.
Yeah. As an aside, even though we need to really talk to Susan because that's why we have her here, but like I've been watching all my friends' kids do their sports skills, and I'm a sports coach, a team sport. These kids are not going to be able to play in teams. All their skills are going to be amazing, but like passing the ball to somebody else, playing another kid, this is going to be one weird outcome of this.
They forgot how.
Can't play with others.
Wow.
So, Susan, what we like to start off asking is, where were you when this became real, and how did your life change after that moment?
That's a great question. I think it's been a series of, oh, wow, this is getting real. I think one of the early ones was I came home from the University of New Haven. I was sitting down pretending that at one point I'd make dinner, and I got an email saying, I can't remember if it said, don't come back, we're not reopening. And I had left food in my refrigerator in my office, my favorite scarf, it's green, it's lovely. And I think I left my computer on because I was going to go back the next day. And at the time I thought, well, it'll be in a few weeks and the food will be rancid, but okay, we'll figure this out. I flew down to Florida to see my husband, and I'm on the plane and people are wiping. This was the 12th. So the bottom hadn't dropped out, but it was about 5 hours from dropping out. People were wiping down their seats, and I had brought hand wipes, and I sat down next to this young woman and said, I have hand wipes and I share. And she had a whole backpack of masks, and there were only 2 people on the plane wearing masks. And my response was, well, that's not very friendly. Because, who wears a mask? I'm not, what are you doing here? And then when
Boy,
I got
that's on a 180.
oh my gosh, what an idiot. And I get to Florida, and my husband is in Florida, and he's been in a bit of a bubble. And I get off the plane, and he said, do you want to get something to eat? And I'm like, no, there's a pandemic. Have you heard? And then I ended up flying back early, thinking I do not want to get stuck in Florida. And then it's very real to me now, but there's been, just like I said, a series of events where I thought, wow, like the first walk I took in my town after coming back, and I had a mask wadded up in my pocket and saw some of the signs that I hadn't seen in my 5 days in Florida. That made it real. Saw that they decorated the Christmas tree on our town green. I have no idea why, but that made it real. It's
Wow.
very real to me now. I don't know if I need another event, but my family has, knock on anything, fortunately not been directly affected, but I know people who have had this, and getting emails from a friend, she's a lawyer, and describing her symptoms, that made it real. It's real.
Yeah, and then to pick it up for you, which I'm wont to do. So I teach. All I teach are a few independent studies.
Mm-hmm.
So it was not difficult for me to make the transition to online learning. As a matter of fact, it kind of enhanced the experience for my students because they didn't need to be near me. No, I was able to bring in guests and do things that way, but I can't imagine what it was like for you having to take all of your classes and switch immediately to online teaching. I mean, I can't imagine. How'd you do it?
It was a slice of heaven. Okay, I didn't have it as bad as other people because I had that this past semester. I taught 2 classes online, which ended at spring break. So that was 2 classes off the table. One class I had was a hybrid class. We only met once a week, and then I ran a practicum. So I had to put one class online, one half of a class. So people like Diane Smith and other people who had to put all their classes online, I would have started drinking. I don't know how they did that. But I do, something interesting, the one class that was hybrid is a senior class. It's a writing class. And I gave them the option. I didn't think we had to meet at the same time every time we normally would have met. But I said, if you just want to get together and talk, all the stuff's online. We can talk about the assignments. And they did. And every week we met at 10 o'clock on Wednesdays. When I was in college, if you'd given me the opportunity to not go to class, I would have grabbed it with both hands. And I even tried to talk them out of it a little bit, like, you got to be kidding me. Hang on.
No, that's okay. Go ahead and get that. Yeah. Okay. Please don't let us
Let me get the
interrupt.
phone.
We'll be here when you get back.
Yeah.
No, but it was stunning to me. And the class, it wasn't a therapy session. We did talk about writing, but I was just so impressed, as I'm sure you were, all of us were, with the students and how they just did it. They were hurting, they were scared, and they just did it. And I've said this before, I'm a stickler for deadlines. I'm not a friendly person if you miss a deadline. I'm teaching journalism. The world does not wait for your whatever. And I would get these heartbreaking emails explaining that, they had to go work extra shifts. They don't have PPEs. They're really sorry. And these were legitimate excuses. Could I be 10 minutes late? No, just don't do the assignment. I'll tell you what, you're a good student. Don't do this assignment. It won't show up on your grade. And then I would tell them the lesson is, if you do good work, people are willing to cut you some slack. But the students were just completely inspiring.
How did I'm curious about the kids that you work with at the Bulletin there, the journalists and aspiring journalists. I mean, you go from writing about, what's happening at Spring Fling to being a budding journalist in the middle of, this incredible thing that's going to mark all of our lives. Like, how did they handle that?
like grown-ups. There was never a thought that we wouldn't keep publishing and that we wouldn't keep broadcasting Charger Bulletin News. Wayne Edwards is the go-to guy there, and none of those students on the television side said, okay, we're done. So they broadcast remotely. And the radio station kept going. It was just, and that wasn't, at least on my part, that wasn't me saying, okay, guys, like we're the news source. This is news. And the tenor of the stories changed. It was all pandemic, all COVID, all the time. You know, we still had the, hey, here's a playlist to listen to when you're bored blind in your grandma's apartment. But we did a lot more hard news. There were some features, but they were all pandemic related. They were just incredible.
I wanted to say that, so I, at one point, I was like, let me see what's going on with the Charger Bulletin. I was blown away at what these students did. Unbelievable.
Yeah, middle of the night. I'd get emails. And as the advisor, I don't have hours. It's, okay, you finish this at 10, I'll look over it, or I'll do we always have 3 sets of eyes, read everything before we publish. They would work through the night. They would hound people at home. They were very comfortable hounding people at home. We had some hotshot journalists, and I get all the credit. It's great, but it was basically no, seriously. I would take the credit if it was mine, but it was mostly me going, you go.
Let me ask you this: what? Because I've said this before. I think it's nobody wants to go through a pandemic, but I think it's pretty interesting for us getting to go through this on a college campus, and to work with our students. And so, I don't know if you've thought about this, but I think it's going to change. This pandemic will change so many things, if not everything. How does it change journalism?
I think journalism was already challenged in the, all the charges of fake news and that sort of thing. I think the attitude, as it did around Watergate, might shift to a little more appreciation of a journalist's job. That the gentleman, Omar Jimenez, who got arrested this morning in Minneapolis, there was such an outpouring. He was on a CNN crew. It was obvious he was working for CNN, and yet he and his crew were arrested. And the outpouring on social media on that kind of thing, I think, I'm sorry that happened. That was ridiculous. But I think people seeing journalists just keep, what the students did, you keep your head down, you do your job, and you will regain the respect that you deserve. So I'm an optimist, which is weird because I'm a journalist. That doesn't make any sense. I do believe that the tide is changing, that it's turning, and I'm hopeful that even while newspapers in particular, my stomping grounds, they're hurting terribly because of their corporate owners and lack of ad revenue. I'm hoping that will change as people's interest in being informed change.
So we're optimistic for you. I've come to rely on more journalists to kind of find the truth these days, because there are certain sectors out there not giving you very good truth, and then people are digging around it. So hopefully, somehow the funding comes along. That I don't know. So.
There has to be we have to look at the delivery system, which has been broken for a long time. We absolutely have to look at the funding system, because when you have vulture capitalists, vulture hedge funds owning news outlets, that's a really bad combination.
I read an interesting article the other day that talked about the fact, actually it's the new columnist for the New York Times who came from, I want to say BuzzFeed maybe, and he's taking over, I think, for David Carr, but he's going to write about the media. And he immediately said, it's interesting, he's going to get in the face of his new employer, because what's been interesting is the New York Times their subscriptions have gone through the roof, but at the same time, local journalism is, having a tough time. They're laying people off, and, that's not being valued in the way that it should. Which, I guess that kind of brings me to, what's the future of local media, local journalism?
Well, it's critical. It's in critical condition right now. If you look at some of the news outlets, some of the newspapers in Connecticut, they're struggling. The Current is furloughing vital journalists. And you can thank Alden Global Capital, their vulture hedge fund majority owner, for that at a time when people most need them. And, I don't know if the answer is public-private partnerships. It's certainly not government bailout, because that's just too ethically icky for words. But the money has to come from somewhere. And I wish I knew. I wish I knew.
So we're both involved, in addition to the University of New Haven, but with Connecticut Public Radio. And I really do love that public radio model, where it's supported by its listeners. And hopefully that charge is that you go out and you do the kind of journalism that you want to do, without having to worry about sponsorships and stuff like that.
Yeah, the whole underwriter thing appeals to me in regard to newspapers. And some newspapers have tried it, and it's kind of a mixed bag. I'm not sure they tried it and implemented everything they could do to make it successful. But, a journalist can't worry about funding. A journalist can't worry about, am I going to anger the people on the corner office? That's kind of the point.
Yeah. So I'm taking it back to more personal for you. How are you coping? How are you hanging in there with this? This is stressful for all of us. I don't know how I'm handling it.
I wish I had a rubber band and I'd pull it. I don't know how I'm handling it either. A lot of rage. Rage gets me through every day. I have an old shed in the back of my yard that I've spent 2 weeks, 5 hours a day scraping paint off of. The paint had morphed in from red to pink, and I'm ready to stain it now, or whatever it now. I've found projects. My house has never looked this good. I finished a wall in my basement. That shed's it has a lawnmower in it, but it's a beautiful shed. A lot of gardening, a lot of physical stuff. And I don't know if this is true for other people. In my job, I can't look to say, look, there's the row I just hoed. Look what I did, and it's nice to have things that you can say, I put in this basketball court, or I did such and so. So I
watched them put in that basketball court.
I would say I did, John. No one's going to ask.
I just let the cat out of the bag a little bit.
I would have said, look what I did. I made this.
Johnny, you need to lean out the window and go, you're welcome.
I'll try.
We should all start every day like that. I'm awake. You're welcome. I'm here.
This is the perfect way to, what we like to close on is, the question of when you get hit with something this bad, the hope is that there's a silver lining in there somewhere. Clean house aside, what is yours?
Mine is, and I've said this before, is that this pandemic has exposed the inequity and the fissures in our culture in a way that you would have to be incredibly stupid not to notice this. And my hope is that we will look at those fissures and those inequities and address the systemic issues that have been there all along. And some of us have been able to just kind of ignore it, or, well, that happens over there. No, it happens here. And your neighbors are hurting. People are going hungry in a country where that should never happen. So for me, the potential good of this, if there can be good of this, is that, okay, let's do this right. Just this once. Let's look at this and let's do this right.
The journalists, either your students or people you work with, are really are talking about that as much?
Oh, hell yeah. Oh my God, yeah. Yeah, we have this conversation in every class where, and the University of New Haven, when I started there, I thought that it was a bunch of rich white kids. And then I walked into my first class and thought, oh no, it's a lot of first generation college students. It's college students who are doing just incredible things with their lives, with the support and without the support sometimes of their home turf, their families. They already know this stuff is going on. And now we're giving them a voice, radio, television, newspapers, blogs, you name it, podcasts. We're giving them a voice to tell the story from their perspective. And they're on it.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's exactly how I feel about, that's why I just love the University of New Haven. You're right. It's not, I mean, it's just such such an inclusive, diverse, group of hardworking, smart students. They are their own people. And for us to get the chance to take the stuff that we've learned over all these millennia, and see what they do with it it's just great. Johnny, you had a question.
Oh, no, I was just going to follow up. Just in the same sort of sense, I don't think it's just kind of the first generation in the University of New Haven. I have a brother that's done very well business-wise, a wonderful human being, and he went back to his university, St. Joseph's in Philadelphia, to judge a business contest last year. And he called me because I know he knows I'm very, similar to your caring, Susan, about the marginalized and the poor, is sort of very important to me. But so he judged this business competition, and none of them were asked to, but every single team in their business plans had like an element of social give back, like without being prompted. So I think there's, the younger generation is going to save us.
Yeah, thank God.
We're just, you know what? I'm 61 next birthday, and I have a keen understanding that some of us just need to shuffle off and die. Get out of the way.
Exactly. Look, I'm coming up on 63, and it's the same thing. Like, we have just messed this place up
beyond my wildest nightmares. Messed the place up,
Yeah.
And so I will accept my time for leaving, and I'll go.
Yeah, me too. Let's get out of here.
Yeah.
That's
All right,
it.
kid, take
I'm
over.
out.
He did leave.
No, I'm back. Hey,
dang it, he's back.
Susan Campbell, thank you so much.
Thank you very much. It was wonderful to talk to you.
Happy pandemic.